Welcome along to this week's Boyle Sports Bet Zone with me, Nigel Seeley. I'm delighted to say, making his Bet Zone debut this week is Liam Gallagher. No, it's not. It's Matt Lawrence, former defender for Millwall and Crystal Palace, and FA Cup captain for Millwall back in 2004. What was that like, marking a certain Ronaldo?
No, luckily I didn't have to mark him. I was just marking Van Nistelrooy, so it was perfectly simple. Yeah.
Well, I tell you what, if you thought that was tough, these Boyle Sports punters are tougher than that. And obviously the old haircut, I like the old look of the Bradley Wiggins sort of Gallagher rock and roll football look. I like that.
Thanks very much. You've got to try something. It's got to be better than no hair looking like Phil Collins. You know what are you going to do?
What do you mean? Studio. Listen, I'll tell you once, mate. I had a full head of hair that would have been you would have been.
I literally can't believe that.
Well, have a look at this. This is me back in the day, my friend. Look at that there, the Chrissy Waddle. You know, Chrissy Waddle there. Yeah,
Chrissy Waddle, they're ginger locks, those.
Mate, strawberry blonde Chrissy Waddle look. Anyway, enough of our nostalgia of our pictures of our youth and our rock and roll imagery. Let's have a look at the football. Let's look at the Premier League this weekend. And it's a big game and a big weekend in the Premier League. And the big one will come on a bit later, the clash between Chelsea and Manchester City. But first up, 12:45 BT Sport. Not one of the most glamorous of matches, but a very tricky one to call. Hull, they host Newcastle at the KC Stadium. Bookies can't split them. Hull completely decimated by injuries. Hull are the bookies' favourites here at Boyle Sports at 8-5. Matt, what do you think?
This is tricky. I totally agree with the bookies. For Hull, I think it's actually a good time to be playing Newcastle because they're poor at the moment. I don't think John Carver's won a game since he's taken over.
Great. How do you get the job?
Well, I just think the assumption is that they've got enough points almost not to get dragged into the relegation zone. But the way they're playing at the moment, you know, I think they can get dragged in now. I think they're on 27 points, but they're not a million miles away. I know, as you say, Hull have they've got a lot of injuries on board at the moment, but I quite fancy Hull here. I don't think there's going to be many goals, but I quite reckon, you know, a low-scoring Hull win. I really do. I just think that John Carver's having real problems at Newcastle. I don't care that it's his home side. Maybe he's not made for that job, and I think Hull could get Steve Bruce, or Steve Bruce can get Hull going here.
John Carver probably the appointment because Mike Ashley doesn't spend any money, and I think that I think it's probably to find out what Steve McLaren does at Derby. I think that's the word on the street. But let's have a look at some stats in the game. Hull have lost to 0 in 4 of their last 5 games. Both teams have scored in 8 of the last Hull matches. But this game last season was 2-2. Early in the season was 2-2, and last season these 2 matches produced 10 goals. So do you go with current form or do you go with history between the two?
I would go with current form at the moment. As I say, I've got a little inkling that Hull could maybe sneak it. As I say, I would probably go with if I'm having to pick a specific score, I would go with a home win at 8-5 for Hull, but I'd also go for a very low scoring win. I think maybe a 1-0 or a 2-0.
I think the banker here is both teams not to score for me. It's a 20-23 industry best with Boyle Sports. Now, if you're playing double bubble, Boyle Sports will double the odds of your first goal scorer selection, if it's a winning selection, in any Premier League game this weekend if your goal scorer scores inside the first 20 minutes. And Matt, who do you fancy for that?
I can't even put a name on that. I think if it is, as I say, it's going to be very low scoring, and if anyone scores, it's going to be late on in the tie. I wouldn't be betting on that in the slightest. The first goal scorer.
Well, my first goal scorer selection is Jimmy, no goal scorer. No goal scorer for me. I think a 13-2 offers great value. I can see this being 0-0. Both teams struggling for points, struggling for wins, and I think they're both settled for a point is the way I will be going. But Matt, he likes the home side here. Okay, I touched on it before, but Saturday 5:30 Sky Sports, the biggest game in the Premier League this weekend. Chelsea, probably without Diego Costa, they host Manchester City. Pick the bones out of that, Mr. Lawrence.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I very much doubt that Chelsea are going to appeal. I think Costa's going to be suspended for the Man City game. Looks like Fabregas will probably be injured as well after John Terry two-footed him on the halfway line in the last game. Man City, though, without Toure and Boney, I've got to fancy it again. I've got to fancy a home win. I was at Stamford Bridge the other day and saw that Chelsea-Liverpool game. I just think they're very, very solid. I like Terry. I like the Terry and Cahill partnership, but the Terry and Zuma partnership did okay as well. Ivanovic is an absolute beast as well. I think Chelsea, I think there may well be goals in this, though. I would reckon, you know, maybe not too high scoring, but I think a Chelsea 2-1 win is a possibility here. Chelsea
2-1 win. Last 3 Chelsea games, they haven't won, but none of them win the all 3, and obviously famously they got beat 4-2 last week. Their last Premier League game was a 5-0 win at Swansea. Massive game for City. Massive game for City more than Chelsea?
Yeah, it's a lot bigger game for City. I think Chelsea can even easily afford the luxury of not losing the game. They can maybe shut up a little bit, sit back slightly, see what Man City bring to the table. I think Man City have only lost one of their last 4 in the league. So yeah, I just think that Man City, although they need to win this, I don't think that's a possibility. I really do fancy Chelsea here quite strongly, especially after their performances, or certainly their performance against Liverpool at Stamford Bridge the other day.
No Yaya Toure, Aguero doesn't look fit, Diego Costa probably won't play, but there is a star-studded array of talent on the pitch nonetheless. And who would you be going for the double bubble in this one?
You know, I said about John Terry, I quite fancy him from set pieces. I really like him. And Chelsea are very, very strong from set pieces. They've got so many big guys up front. I quite fancy John Terry, I must admit, as a first goal scorer in this.
Well, Matt, I don't agree with anything you said so far in this game. I like under 2.5 goals. I think this will be really, really cagey. It was 1-1 earlier this season at the Etihad. I think City they have to go and win, but I think Chelsea will be happy with a point here. I'm all over the draw, and I like under 2.5 goals at a very generous looking 10-11. I think this will be tight, but John Terry to score the first goal and hopefully land a double bobble with a goal inside the first 20 minutes. And if there is a goal inside the first 20 minutes, that throws out my under 2.5 goals, and that throws out my draw. Okay, first goal scorer punters and double bubble punters and goals punters will all be going to the Emirates on Sunday. I'm going to the Emirates to the game I'm at. 1:30 on Sunday afternoon. They're at home to Aston Villa. The shortest price on the Premier League coupon this week. They're 2-9 at home to beat Villa. Is there a shock on the cards here, Matt?
Absolutely no chance. This is as a surefire thing as a home banker as I think you can have, as you say, and the bookies are alluding to that as well. And I would also envisage an awful lot of goals. I think if Arsenal score early on, it could be 4 or 5. I don't think I think it's been something like 5 games since Aston Villa have scored a goal as well. So I don't see them managing to score or get anything at the Emirates, to be perfectly frank. As I say, I'm not quite sure that you could start betting on a 4 or 5-0, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised at a 2 or 3-0 victory. It depends how early on Arsenal score those goals. If they went 2 or 3-0 up, I think they might just sit back and rest players and be happy to not pick up injuries. But yeah, I don't see how anyone can think anything other than a relatively comfortable Arsenal victory.
And Arsenal unbeaten in their last 7 matches. They've won 6 of those 7 matches. They've won 0 in 4 of the last 5, and Aston Villa haven't scored in their last 5 Premier League matches. And there was a competition on the Aston Villa website. It wasn't goal of the month, it was month of the goal, and it was January. They haven't scored this year in the Premier League.
Well, they're struggling. They've only scored 11 goals in all 22 games in the Premier League. I think either of us can work out the maths on how often they score. Yeah, they're just struggling. They're struggling in front of goal massively. I don't even think they're not great defensively. It's just I think this is as easy a game in the Premier League as there can be for Arsenal.
They said that last year, first day of the season. Giroud scores after 5 minutes, and Aston Villa won 3-1.
That's not going to happen.
Famous last words from Matt Lawrence, and if it does, thank you very much for your one and only performance here on the Ball Sports Bet Zone. Actually, I have to agree with the man. I'm only joking. I think Arsenal to win 0 is my nap of the weekend here at 20-23 with Ball Sports. Almost even money about that. That's got to be worth a bet.
Without a shadow of a doubt. I would be, that's for sure.
And if you're looking for the double bubble, the question mark you've got to ask yourself is, how does Wenger fit all these players in? Who's going to start? Who's going to score? And where do we make the money?
Well, I can't look any further than Sanchez, you really can't. I think he's just an absolute live wire. So good in front of goal as well, just fitted into the Premier League perfectly well. Got to be Sanchez, I think, in my eyes. So
Sanchez to land a double bubble, not for the first time this season, but there's a lot of big names coming back for Arsenal. And where did he start? What does he drop? What formation does he play? But one thing's for certain, Sanchez will start in this game, and we think he will score the opening goal. Okay, the final game on Sunday, 4 o'clock, Super Sunday, Southampton home to Swansea, 4-7 Southampton, 5-1 Swansea. Southampton dumped out the FA Cup last week by Crystal Palace, a game you were at.
Yeah, Southampton weren't at the races, to be perfectly honest. Crystal Palace played pretty well, kept coming from behind as well. I don't see that happening in this game, though. I've seen Swansea in the last few games. I certainly saw them get absolutely tonked by Chelsea 5-0. I think that was down at the Liberty Stadium. Watched that game, and they're having a real tough time at the moment. Gary Monk's got to try and turn things around, and I don't see that he's going to be able to do it against Southampton. Really like Southampton. I know they had that tough game in the FA Cup against Palace. I like them at the back, though, to have only conceded 16 goals in the Premier League, the best defensive record in the Premier League. And I would go along with those statistics as well. And I think this will be a 1 or a 2-0 win to Southampton. I think they'll be too strong for Swansea.
So you're liking Southampton to win 0 in this game?
Yes, I do.
Southampton to win 0 was around about 11-8 with Ball Sports. Check the Betzone, check the website to make sure the price is okay. But so I'm going to give you some stats to disagree with Mr. Lawrence. Swansea have only won 1 in their last 6 games. Okay, we know that. But they've conceded 16 goals in those last games and scored 10. So every time they play, there's goals.
Not in the league, I don't think so. In the league, in the last 4 league games, I think, what have they scored? I think they've scored 11 goals and scored something like 2 or 3. So I'm totally disagreeing with you. I think Southampton are going to run away with this. I think it will be. I've seen Swansea the last couple of games. They're not a great side at the moment. They have, without Boney as well, only Gomez up front. It doesn't even look as though Gomez wants to be there either. Even now, he is the first choice centre forward. And when I have seen him, he keeps getting the ball trapped under his foot. He keeps tripping over the ball. He's really struggling in front of goal, and he struggles to hold the ball up as well as Boney. I think this will be a tough afternoon for Swansea.
OK, I disagree. Both teams to score for me, yes, at 23-20. OK, Matt, this is where you've got to pay your money. You come on here, you've got to give us a nap suggestion where we're going to make the money this weekend. Yeah,
for me, it's in this last game. A 2-0 victory for Southampton. I'm totally all over that. I think a win to nil is perfect in my eyes.
So 2-0 at a decent price and a win to nil, which is around about 11-8. I've got a fourfold, which is enhanced by Boyle Sports. I'm going for both teams not to score in Hull v Newcastle, which could be a 0-0 draw in my book. I'm going for under 2.5 goals in Chelsea v Man City. I'm going for Arsenal to win to nil. Pretty negative so far, but I'm going for both teams to score as a yes in Southampton v Swansea, which pays a monster 14-1. It is available now on the Boyle Sports Bet Zone. My nap would be Arsenal to win to nil. That's been the Boyle Sports Bet Zone. Me and Matt now are off to exchange childhood photo pictures. See you next week.